In an empty hallway, the pale blue-gray light felt cold and lonely. A girl sat alone by the door, hugging her knees, looking small and isolated. Another woman turned back and asked, "Sitting here alone again? Want me to give you a ride home?" "Or you could wait at my place instead," the girl replied gently. "It's fine. I'll just read a novel for a while," the woman said as she walked inside. "But honestly, no matter what, your uncle is still family, even if you're not his own child. He could at least give you a house key." The girl said nothing, only stayed silent. I'm used to this by now, but hearing someone say it out loud still feels a little embarrassing. This novel is wonderful. No matter how hard things get, it always ends happily. And it's beautifully written too. No wonder it's so popular. The screen showed a button that read, "Continue to the prequel," with a red warning mark beside it. The girl wondered, there's a prequel? The content you're looking for doesn't exist. See, I knew it. I've never heard of The Doomed Young Lady having a prequel. The girl stayed in the same spot, leaning against the wall along the long hallway as night fell. She said wearily, "How much longer do I have to wait? I'm so sleepy." Is this a dream? An orange-haired little girl sat drawing on a sheet of paper in the middle of a lush green garden, surrounded by trees and soft sunlight. Yellow leaves drifted slowly through the still air, giving the scene a dreamlike quality. The little girl held a blue crayon, absorbed in drawing on the white paper in front of her. Her face suddenly tensed with fright as a loud shout came from outside. "That pencil and paper belong to me." A hand suddenly grabbed the little girl's arm as she held the pencil, yanking it back hard. A red-haired boy with fierce blue eyes raised his hand, his face twisted with fury. He shouted, "Who gave you permission to touch my things, you thief?" The blonde girl turned with a bewildered look, murmuring softly, "Brother Oleg," as if pleading for mercy. The red-haired boy kept shouting, raising the pencil high, "Don't you dare call me brother! You're nothing but a cursed child who brought death to your own parents. Get out of my house now." His boot stomped hard on a sheet of paper lying on the ground. Oleg turned and stormed off, shouting as he went, "Even if it's trash I'm throwing away, you're still not allowed to pick it up." A servant answered, "Yes, young Master Oleg." The blonde girl sat alone on the grass, head bowed low, wrapped in a heavy, silent sorrow. The scribbled drawing lay on the ground, soaked by the rain. On the paper was a picture of 3 people, an adult and 2 children holding hands, representing a family. The sky began to pour down heavy rain. The girl wondered, is it raining now? Chasey Zeviana, niece of Marquess Zeviana. When she was 3 years old, both her parents died in an accident. Her grandfather sent her to be raised by his eldest son. So Chasey went to live with her uncle, Gus Zeviana, on his estate. Is she mute? What bad luck, that girl's cursed. Maybe it's dark magic, truly Oleg. The girl wasn't abused, nor was she threatened. She simply wasn't wanted, and no one paid her any attention. Whenever her grandfather came to visit, her uncle would only pretend to care. An elderly man with a dignified bearing stood before a luxurious carriage. He was Chasey's grandfather. "Chasey, would you like to come with me? Would you like to come live with me?" "Chasey, why won't you talk to me?" "Is it because you don't want to?" Chasey's lips parted slightly as if she wanted to say something, hesitation clear in her eyes. The girl looked as though she was about to speak, her expression urgent. "I want to." Chasey rushed forward and threw her arms tightly around the old man. "Please take me away, let me leave this place," she begged him. The grandfather looked down at her, stunned, his eyes wide and brows furrowed. He knelt before Chasey. "I'm sorry, Chasey." He lifted her up into his arms. "Chasey, let's go home." In that moment, the morning light shone at its brightest. For the first time in 6 years, Chasey could smell the flowers. Chasey, now a little older, stood by the door in her nightgown hugging a teddy bear, eavesdropping on a conversation. Her face showed worry as a voice drifted from the room. "You should have handed the family guild over to me. If you'd let me help, you wouldn't have worked yourself sick like this," the old man said. "And let you ruin everything the family built?" The Marquess replied, "Do you think I have any other choice, father? I'm the only son you have left." The old man grew angry amid a fit of coughing. They suddenly froze at the sound of a knock on the door. Chasey, in her flowered nightgown, clutched her teddy bear tightly, her wide eyes full of worry. Standing at the door, she looked up. I heard shouting. Chasey's grandfather smiled warmly, bending down to stroke his worried granddaughter's head. "Grandpa, are you all right?" "Don't worry, I'll be fine." Chasey smiled with relief, her eyes easing. He kept stroking her head and said gently, "Chasey, go back to bed now." Chasey turned and walked away, hugging her bear, calling back, "Good night, Grandpa." He smiled and replied, "Good night, Chasey." Moments later, he collapsed, clutching his chest as a loud crash rang out. His son cried out in panic from a distance. "Father!" On a cold, rainy night, Chasey stood quietly by the large window, gazing outside. Her small, lonely figure contrasted with the dark scene in the distant castle in the rain. In a spacious room, dim light filtered through the tall window as a blonde girl sat silently by the bed, looking down at the motionless man. Not long after, the Marquis passed away. And from that day on, no one paid any attention to Chasey. Her violet eyes went wide, her lips pressed together, tears welling at the corners. Grandpa. Before long, rumors of bad luck and misfortune spread around Chasey, so her uncle locked her away. As Chasey watched her grandfather's coffin being carried off, she knew her heart would never stop raining. "You, come with me." Chasey had grown up now. 6 long years passed, and at last she was released from her small room. Her uncle, smiling brightly, said, "The arranged marriage between our two families is still valid, isn't it? That agreement was made while your grandfather was still alive. Just lend me a bit of money to pay off my debts, and I can send Chasey to marry into the Hubbs family right away." Chasey stood still, her gaze cold, showing no emotion. A young man wearing glasses, his expression stern, cut in with suspicion in his voice. "She's only 16. You just want access to the Hubbs family fortune, so you're rushing to marry her off, aren't you? This engagement was made when our two families were equals, but now you're selling off a woman in your house to pay your debts. In my eyes, you're worse than garbage. I will never marry a useless woman like her. Please reconsider, young Master Hubbs. I always knew she was a daughter nobody wanted." Chasey's uncle and cousin had managed the territory so poorly that within 6 years they had run up a massive debt. The people rose up in revolt, driving the family to the brink of ruin. In a great hall, Chasey, her golden hair gleaming, knelt alone on the floor, surrounded by an angry crowd filling every level. They screamed in despair and fury, "Pay us back, pay me back, you owe us an explanation, execute her." To appease the royal court and the public, Chasey's uncle used her, the girl he had locked away for 6 years, as a scapegoat. The cursed girl, they said, brought misfortune, the deaths of her parents, and her grandfather too. She was the perfect sacrifice for the disaster facing the territory. Her eyes went wide with shock and terror. The man said gravely, "Dying to atone for your sin is the mercy that God grants you." Chasey was only 16 when she was sentenced to death. "Lady Chasey, it's time to wake up." The blonde girl bolted upright, eyes wide with panic. She put a hand to her neck and muttered, "Phew, my head's still attached." Chasey looked down at her hands, still dazed. She thought, what was that just now? A dream? It felt far too real. A small hand rose in front of her face. Chasey stared at it. Huh? A child's hand? In a room filled with morning light, a maid stood near the bed, holding a red dress. She said, "Lady Chasey, Lord Gus said to wear this dress and wait for him in his study." Chasey turned her head in surprise, her expression bewildered, her thoughts racing. "Chasey? My lord?" She saw her own reflection in the mirror. She gasped. "What?" Chasey froze, pressing a hand to her cheek in shock. "Did I really travel to another world? I've possessed the body of Chasey Zeviana, a 6-year-old girl." The maid repeated coldly, "Didn't you hear what I said, Lady Chasey?" Chasey thought to herself, no matter what, Chasey is still the niece of a marquis. I can overlook the informal way of speaking, but this contemptuous tone is simply too much. The maid looked at Chasey with a stern gaze. "Lord Gus said to change into this dress." Chasey thought, she isn't using force, but treating a 6-year-old this way is still cruel. The maid spoke in a lowered, commanding tone. "Can you manage this much on your own?" It felt more suffocating, more oppressive by the moment. This was the kind of life she used to endure. The girl said calmly and clearly, "I can do it." The maid standing by the bed flinched, her lips parting in surprise. "Ah," Chasey tilted her head, her sharp gaze fixed on the maid. She said, "Then you may wait outside." Chasey sat on the bed while the maid stood by, still stunned. "And remember to close the door on your way out." The maid glanced back, her look strange, tinged with unease. She answered softly, "Yes, the door will be closed." What is going on? Am I imagining this? I've never seen anyone with such a calm yet unwavering gaze. The maid began to break into a sweat, her face visibly tense. Back in the room, the girl sat on the bed, holding the dress that had been handed to her earlier. Thinking about how she had traveled to this world again, she even had the girl's original memories. It felt as if she herself had lived through them. The Zeviana family, that was the name of the house the novel's heroine belonged to. So did that mean she had landed in the prequel? In the novel, the heroine, Isu, stumbles upon her tragic past one day. She had lived in poverty among commoners, only to discover she was descended from the noble Zeviana line. She resolved to take revenge on those who had destroyed her family. In the end, she built a powerful territory of her own, winning the hearts of not one, not two, but 4 leading men. As for me, I ended up reincarnated as Chasey Zeviana, a girl who died before the story even began. I swear I will avenge everyone, grandfather, mother, father, and my sister Chasey. Even though Chasey now rests in heaven, I'm sure this will make her smile. So then, the end of my life will become the starting point for Gus's glorious story, huh? Chasey was nothing more than a sacrificial pawn to the novel. The girl clenched her fists in anger, her face full of resentment. It's so unfair, she was only mentioned twice in the entire dialogue. She was just a minor character in the narration, yet she still had to endure a short, lonely life. If I do nothing, I'll meet the exact same end. No one will care about me, I'll be completely alone. I won't let that happen. The girl tied her hair up high with a red ribbon, her face set with determination and resolve. Even if it means the heroine's story never begins, I won't sit still and become someone else's stepping stone. I will become a new Chasey Zeviana and survive. Little Chasey in her red dress walked ahead with confident steps, while a maid followed behind, looking somewhat timid. An orange rolled across the floor and touched her foot. Ahead, an angry voice shouted, "I said I hate the smell of oranges, and you still get everything wrong." Oleg was scolding a maid, oranges scattered around them. "Clumsy fool, I'm sorry, young Master Oleg, it's my fault, I'm sorry. The boy kicked hard toward the servant. "Are you someone who can't remember what I say unless I teach you a lesson?" "Well then, do you understand now, do you get it?" The servant answered, "Yes." "It's my fault, I understand my mistake, young Master Oleg." His foot rose again, ready to kick when Chasey spoke. She already said she understood. Oleg looked at Chasey in surprise and said, "Are you talking to me?" Chasey's eyes glistened, weary and irritated, and she said nothing. Chasey bent down and looked straight at the maid who had just been struck. Her expression gentle, her eyes sincere. "Are you all right?" She reached out her hand slightly, showing clear concern. The maid froze, stunned into silence, staring blankly, lips parted. Suddenly the maid recoiled, her face twisted with panic and anger, and she screamed, "Don't touch me, you cursed child!" Chasey's eyes went wide with utter shock. That's right, everyone hates me. That explained the earlier behavior of the maid who had brought her the dress. She was probably afraid of the curse too. Chasey kept her head down, saying nothing. Oleg gestured with his hand, and the maid bowed, obeying him. "Young Master Oleg has trained me very well," he said smugly. "See? Is something wrong with your head, daring to order me around like that?" Chasey said calmly. "If the master wants to strike the maid and the maid is willing to take the blow, then go ahead." "Chasey!" "It seems I interfered unnecessarily. Sorry for the trouble." Both Oleg and the maid behind Chasey looked startled. Oleg's face flushed red with fury, his teeth clenched. He stuck out his foot and tripped her. Chasey stumbled forward, throwing her arms out to catch her balance, her face full of shock. She bent down, braced herself with her hands, and let out a soft groan. The moment she stood up, Oleg stepped closer, looming over her with a challenging look. "What's with that arrogant act? After all, you're nothing but an unwanted orphan." Chasey turned her face aside, her eyes empty with pain. Oleg raised his hand to touch the red brooch pinned to his chest. "Do you know what this is?" "It's proof that I'm the heir to Marquis Zeviana. Only the successor is allowed to own it. My father said he only took you in as an act of charity. That makes us your benefactors. So you'd best remember your place." Oleg, triumphant, bent down to look Chasey in the eye, his voice cruel. "Don't forget, it was your own wicked curse that killed your parents. Anyone who's kind to you ends up dead because of you." She lowered her head. Just as she thought, he was exploiting Chasey's silence and submission to bully her. Oleg's eyes went wide with shock. "What?" "You'd better keep your distance from me from now on, Oleg. Otherwise, I'm afraid I won't be able to hold back." Oleg asked, startled. "Huh? Hold back from what?" Suddenly, Chasey grabbed his collar and said coldly, Don't move. Chasey raised her hand high, her violet eyes blazing with fury, ready to strike down. The red-haired boy's eyes went wide with shock, a scratch marked on his cheek. Two maids stood side by side, both on edge. One glared, leaning forward, clearly shocked. The other stared wide-eyed, her mouth open in surprise. Two other maids hurried over, their faces full of worry. Oleg gritted his teeth, his eyes blazing with rage, and growled through clenched jaws. You! He roared, his face burning red with anger, the veins in his hand standing out. You want to die? Instantly, the girl swung her left hand, striking down with a fierce slap. A sharp crack rang out, the powerful backhand blow sending the boy reeling. Oleg's head snapped to one side, and he stood there dazed. He remained stunned, his cheeks flushed red, his eyes glistening with tears, his lips trembling. Chasey stood upright, her eyes cold, her hand still poised from the strike. Her voice was firm. I was afraid that if I didn't hold back, I'd hit you far harder than that. Tears welled in Oleg's eyes as he choked back sobs. Hoo-hoo! Then he burst into tears, and the two maids rushed over in alarm. One knelt down anxiously, young Master Oleg, while the other helped him up. Young Master, are you all right? The maid shouted furiously, glaring at Chasey. How dare you? That's outrageous! How could you do something so vicious? Chasey looked at her own hand, her gaze cold but tinged with disdain. Calling that vicious, she thought to herself. What a shame this 6-year-old body is so weak. Otherwise, I'd have hit him hard enough that he'd never dare cry again. Another maid clutched Oleg, shouting furiously, If the Marquis and Lord Gus find out, you're finished. From a distance, a man's deep voice rang out. Find out what? The whole group flinched and turned around. A gentleman in formal attire stepped in, his bearing stern. Behind him was a young red-haired man. A maid cried out in alarm. The Marquess! Chasey was caught off guard, old memories flooding back. She whispered awkwardly, Grandfather. A maid immediately accused her. Lady Chasey suddenly struck young Master Oleg. Chasey's eyes went wide with shock. What did she just say? The Marquess turned and asked, Chasey, did you strike someone? It seemed the maid facing her was lying. Chasey, stunned and wary, watched as the maid continued. We were just having a normal conversation with young Master Oleg when Lady Chasey suddenly attacked him for no reason. The other maid lowered her head, her voice sorrowful. I was hurt too, trying to protect young Master Oleg. The Marquis raised an eyebrow slightly, his voice questioning. You're saying it was unprovoked? The red-haired man stepped forward, trying to calm the tension, calling out softly, Father. Then he continued. Chasey still hasn't gotten over losing her parents. Her mind is unstable. Give her more time and she'll be fine. Father, please don't worry. It's normal for Chasey to not understand things at her age. I'll raise her properly. The Marquis sighed, his gaze softening. Very well, since you've given your word. Then he added, Children need to be taught patiently. Be more tolerant. Yes, Father, I understand. Please don't worry. Chasey bowed deeply before Oleg and the maids, saying earnestly, I'm sorry, it was my fault. Everyone was stunned, their eyes wide. What? Chasey continued, still humble. Everything everyone said is true. I shouldn't have lost my temper over something so small. Oleg stammered, dazed. What did you say was true? The Marquis looked at Chasey gently. Oh, what did Oleg say? Chasey said quietly but clearly that I bring misfortune, that I caused my parents' deaths and will bring death to those I love as well. Oleg panicked and tried to explain that was because, but Chasey cut him off. But I've thought it over, and he's right. The Marquis looked at Chasey in silence, then asked, Why do you think he's right? Chasey looked up, her eyes brimming with tears. Because if Uncle and the maids all say the same thing, then it must be true. The whole room fell silent, no one spoke. The Marquis's expression suddenly darkened, and he shouted furiously, Gus! Gus flinched, sweat trickling down his forehead as he forced a smile. Father, Chasey's mind isn't stable, so she often misunderstands, thinking everyone hates her. The Marquis slammed his cane onto the floor at once, the crack echoing loudly, startling everyone. He shouted furiously, Open your eyes and look. Does this child seem emotionally unstable to you? Gus stood frozen, stammering without a word. Chasey remained standing still, her expression calm to the point of coldness. In his fury, Gus swung his hand and struck Oleg hard across the face. The boy fell to the floor. Gus shouted, How could you say such things to your own sister? Oleg sat on the floor, stammering, Father, A maid who had defended Oleg from the start froze in shock, horrified. The grandfather approached, his voice slow and heavy. Gus, you once promised me you would take good care of Chasey. Gus trembled at his words. He hastily tried to defend himself, hand clutching his chest near his badge. Father, you said to keep her near Oleg so the two children would have each other as friends. That's why I took her in. Father, I didn't know about this. It was the servants' doing. The grandfather frowned, his voice dropping with fury. Do you have any idea how much rumors like this could damage the family's reputation? If word spread to the church and the royal court that the Zeviana family has a child marked as cursed, do you understand what the consequences would be? Whether it's due to a lack of discipline on the estate or servants being allowed to bully a young lady, either reason is enough to prove your incompetence. Gus panicked, crying out in remorse. I'm sorry, Father, I'll dismiss all of them and find better maids to replace them. The great hall fell into silence. The maid's eyes went wide with terror, sweat running down her temples, and she stammered. How could this happen? Oleg's eyes went round with shock, a strange confusion rising in him. He thought, this is the first time I've ever seen Father look like this. His hand tightened around the red brooch on his coat. It was identical to Oleg's, the family's inherited treasure of the Zeviana line. In his past life, it was this same man's incompetent hands that had brought the Zeviana estate to ruin. Just then, the grandfather stood behind Chasey, watching her closely. The girl flinched, and a thought raced through her mind. Grandfather, since when have you been watching me like this? Did I just make some strange expression? Even so, there's no other way now. I have to use this chance to make him take me with him. The girl clutched the hem of her red dress tightly, her eyes shining with a pitiful look, and said in a trembling voice, My Lord Marquis, Inside, she was shouting, Is this pathetic enough? Am I pulling this off right? Damn it, I can't cry. The grandfather looked at her, his gaze thoughtful. Then he spoke with resolve. Prepare Chasey's things, she will come home with me. Chasey thought to herself in shock, I hadn't even had the chance to show anything yet. Father, surely you don't mean. The grandfather looked at Chasey, his voice calm but firm. From today on, this child will live with me. A modern school, a clear blue sky, a shout echoing through the classroom. The class fund is gone. Someone replied, was it stolen? In the classroom, students in white uniforms stirred restlessly, some standing, others turning to look at each other. A voice rang out with an order. Everyone, search around and see if you can find it. A long-haired girl opened her bag, her face turning pale, eyes filled with dread. The missing class fund had turned up in her own bag. In the classroom, everyone began whispering. She's an orphan, you know. A blonde girl rested her chin on her hand, her voice full of scorn. I heard her uncle never gives her allowance, that's probably why she stole it. It wasn't me, a boy said indifferently, his eyes full of contempt. Caught red-handed and still trying to deny it. She looks exactly like the type who'd do this. At the front of the class, the teacher's voice was stern. Stay after class. You'll clean the whole room by yourself. Think about what you've done. The girl only stayed silent. A sneaker, soaked through with water, dripped drop by drop. The black-haired girl held the wet shoe in her hand, her eyes full of despair. Behind her, two girls laughed mockingly. Looks like you'll have to carry those wet shoes home. The blonde girl smirked. Heh, I knew it was her. She strode quickly toward the group of three girls. Without warning, she splashed water straight at the blonde girl. Splash. Water sprayed everywhere, sending the girl stumbling back in shock. The blonde girl shouted furiously, My shoes! Are you out of your mind? In the dim hallway, the blonde girl crossed her arms and snapped an order angrily. Who do you think you are doing that to me? Teach her a lesson. A voice called out, Lianjin. The blonde girl turned, caught off guard. Behind her stood the black-haired girl, her body bruised, breathing weakly but speaking with a firm voice. You're the one who put money in my bag, aren't you? You're also the one who ruined my shoes. Li Yanjin sneered, her eyes gleaming with satisfaction. So what if I am? The black-haired girl trembled as she stood up, her voice full of pain. Why would you do that? Keep hitting her until she never dares to look at me like that again. That night, the black-haired girl came home and stood before the door, the night sky calm and quiet. I'm home. But cold words drifted out from inside the house. Why do we have to raise someone else's child? What a nuisance. Just put up with it until she graduates high school. Only one more year to go. She opened the door and stepped inside, saying softly, "I'm home." Inside, 3 people sat with their backs turned, and no one answered. That night, in the dark room, she sat curled up by the window. Her small hand switched on the voice recorder, its light glowing as it played back the recording. "You're the one who put money in my bag, aren't you? You're also the one who ruined my shoes." The next day in class, she stood before the board holding the recorder. Beside her stood the teacher and a police officer. The recording played, "Why would you do that?" The whole class stared in shock. The recorder played the shouted words, "Keep hitting her, until she never dares look at me like that again." She stood there, her expression cold, her hand gripping the recorder tightly. "That's right, I suppose I really am a cruel person. Because I never had anyone to rely on, I had to learn to protect myself." The days of quietly letting that family bully a 6-year-old child were over. I left Gus's estate about a year before Chasey did. At Gus's estate, no one paid any attention to Chasey. The child wasn't treated well, nor was she properly fed. Only when her grandfather came to visit would they bother giving her presentable clothes. Although she'd guessed her grandfather might visit given the appearance of these clothes, she hadn't expected her first attempt to succeed so easily. She had assumed she'd need to weep over daily mistreatment to convince him to take her away, but it turned out to be far easier than that. Still, she knew this was only the beginning. She might still be limited by the body of a 6-year-old child. But if she didn't fight back, she would die. "It's fine, I can do this, I have to protect myself. I'm already used to this kind of life." Suddenly, Chasey flinched, her mouth falling open. "Chasey, are you satisfied now?" She turned, feigning innocence. "About what exactly?" Her grandfather studied her with a sharp, appraising gaze. "In the past, every time I came, you stayed silent. But today is different. It's as if you've become an entirely different person, Chasey." Chasey was thoroughly startled, her mouth falling open. "Eek," she thought to herself. "No way, don't tell me he's noticed." The man looked at her seriously, his voice sharp. "Indeed, you barely seem like a 6-year-old anymore. You don't want to live with Gus, you want me to take you away. Are you trying to tell me they've mistreated you, aren't you?" Chasey froze, thinking to herself. It feels as though he can see right through me, as if he's probing gently, but in a way that doesn't feel harsh. My goal isn't just to leave Gus's estate. Chasey truly just wants to live with him. There was another reason, too. Even though the original Chasey and I are 2 different souls, I've fully absorbed her memories and feelings as if they were my own. Grandfather was the only light in both of our lives. He was the only person neither of us wanted to be hated by. The grandfather looked at her with a gentle but thoughtful gaze. "I'm sorry, Chasey, I shouldn't have said that. You must have suffered a great deal." Chasey froze, one thought echoing in her mind. Huh? Why did just hearing those words bring tears to her eyes? She lowered her head, eyes welling up, trying to hold back. "No, Grandpa, it's not your fault. Chasey was suddenly pulled into his embrace, his voice gentle. "From now on, I will protect you." A hand gently touched Chasey's cheek, and she looked up, overwhelmed with emotion. "So don't cry anymore, Chasey." Through the carriage window, sunlight streamed brightly through the leaves outside. Grandfather held Chasey in his arms, a warm and peaceful moment. So this is what it feels like to be held. But he was wrong about one thing. This time, it will be me who protects him. Elsewhere, Gus wore a dark expression, jaw clenched. That damned old man. Before long, I will take over the entire territory, and then let's see who still dares to lecture me. He should have handed the family guild over to me. Does he think I have any other choice? A nightmare? No, it felt more like a warning. The original story took place in the kingdom of Licknice, where the king lay gravely ill while the queen conspired with the church to seize power. On the surface, the kingdom appeared peaceful, but in the shadows lay a struggle for power and constant conflict. Nobles loyal to the king were suppressed and eliminated one by one. Among them was the Zeviana family. The eldest son was incompetent, selfish, and stubborn. The second son and his wife vanished without a trace, leaving only their daughter, Isu, to survive. The third son and his wife, Chasey's parents, died when their carriage plunged off a cliff. Though he managed the territory very well, he too could not escape his fate. In Chasey's memory, he would pass away 2 years from now. Right after that, Gus became the new Marquess. Under his rule, the family declined rapidly and the castle burned to the ground. Chasey's memories didn't give her much to go on, but it couldn't be a coincidence that every capable member of the family kept dying young. If the title fell into Gus's hands, everything would soon be destroyed. If she wanted to save her grandfather, she would also have to protect his entire territory. I will take Gus's place and become his other choice. Lady Chasey, are you all right? Chasey clutched her blanket tightly, asking in confusion, "What's going on? Who are you?" The maid embraced Chasey gently, soothing the trembling girl. A gentle smile spread across her lips as she hummed a soft lullaby. There, don't be afraid, Nightmare. Fly away now. Ah, that's right, yesterday I moved into the Zeviana estate. The maid, her face bright, introduced herself respectfully. My name is Winnie. I've been assigned as your lady's personal maid. From now on, I'll attend to all your needs. Chasey lowered her head, gripping her blanket tightly, and answered softly. A personal maid, I don't need one. I can manage myself. Without warning, Winnie pulled Chasey into a tight hug, leaving the girl wide-eyed with shock. Her cheerful voice rang out. Nightmare, fly away now. Chasey struggled free from Winnie's embrace, her face pale, panting for breath. She thought to herself, compared to a nightmare, I'm more afraid of being strangled to death. What on earth was that? How can one girl be so strong? Could she possibly be an assassin? Chasey struggled to climb down from the bed. The maid standing nearby said earnestly, Lady Chasey, please let me help you. The girl finally made it down, but this time she couldn't reach the wash basin. Chasey stood on her toes, straining to reach. The maid pleaded again, Lady Chasey, please let me help you. While struggling, Chasey lost her balance and tumbled off the stool, sprawling flat on the floor. The maid cried out in alarm. Chasey, her face flushed, clenched her fists in frustration and thought, damn it. With a body this weak, how could I ever become grandfather's other choice? If I want to strengthen the family, I need to investigate the current situation in the territory. The original Chasey had never had the slightest understanding of any of it. The girl looked out at the great hall, where a man dressed in black, sharp-eyed, stood beside a maid. They were whispering to each other. Chasey watched quietly, her eyes full of suspicion. A thought ran through the girl's mind. What are they talking about? The way they were looking at each other made her uneasy. Outside the bright entrance hall, a carriage stood ready. A man in a black uniform stood before it and spoke. Lady Chasey, I am the steward, Nayland. I've heard you'd like to go shopping in town. Chasey looked up, her gaze a mix of doubt and curiosity, and asked coolly, Is there a problem? The man said, Your ladyship's dresses have already been custom ordered, but if you insist on going into town, I would be glad to take you to buy some ready-made dresses instead. My only concern is that the ready-made dresses would become useless once the custom ones arrive. I'm afraid the Marquis would not approve if he heard of this. She wondered, what is he really trying to say? Insistent, worried, old-fashioned, he seemed to be implying that she was stubborn, ignorant, and wasteful, and that her grandfather would be displeased if he found out. He was merely a steward, yet he wore a military uniform. Unlike her grandfather, he carried a sharp presence and a weight that pressed in around him. And most importantly, he seemed to dislike her. Steward Nayland. In her past life, he had actually been quite friendly to Chasey, so why was he like this now? What had changed him so much? If you're finished speaking, please, get in the carriage. He paused for a moment, his eyes widening. You? Chasey closed her eyes and answered calmly. Yes, let's go. There's something I need to address right away. Inside the carriage, Chasey sat across from the man, her small figure looking tiny. Chasey looked at him directly and said bluntly, If there's something you want to say, just say it. After 3 years living with Gus's family, Lady Chasey had become just like them, stubborn, reckless, having inherited none of the Marquis's or her father's fine qualities. What a disappointment. Chasey looked down, then curled her lips into a mocking smile. Humph, she muttered inwardly, so that's how it is. This scoundrel actually dares to say such things. She kept her voice calm, though her eyes flickered with suppressed anger. Either way, we're only buying ready-made clothes, so let's just skip the custom order, shall we? The man was taken aback. What did you just say? He lowered his voice and explained. But the nobility of this country have always used custom-made clothing. She asked coldly, didn't you just say? Chasey sighed softly, her eyes weary. I understand what you mean now. The man crossed his arms in front of his chest awkwardly. Chasey tilted her head, her voice full of implication. Actually, from the very start, you never intended to prepare anything for me. In fact, you probably thought. That grandfather shouldn't have brought me home at all, isn't that right? The man's face changed color, sweat breaking out from the shock. He said nothing, offering no rebuttal at all. In her mind, Chasey concluded, he isn't denying it. You're right. I am stubborn and reckless. If I hadn't slapped Oleg that day, grandfather might never have brought me back to the main estate. But there's one thing you got wrong. I am not like Uncle Gus and Oleg. I know grandfather isn't like other nobles. He spent years leading troops into battle, and now he single-handedly upholds the family's prosperity. He likes to make the most of what he has, and despises extravagance and waste, doesn't he? The man, stunned, blurted out, How could a 6-year-old child possibly know that? You're not the only one who has taken grandfather's teachings to heart. I remember them clearly, too. But I don't want a personal maid. The ones who served me before all treated me with disgust. She raised an eyebrow, her gaze icy. And what about you? How much longer do you intend to keep this attitude? Without warning, he rose sharply and bowed deeply. Forgive me, Lady Chasey, I was prejudiced, I was wrong. The Marquis's teachings are the very creed of my life. I meant no offense toward you, my lady. I sincerely apologize. A silence fell over them. Just as Chasey remembered, he was a loyal man, one who placed the Marquis's and the family's interests above all else, not particularly tactful, but trustworthy. He wasn't even afraid to speak his mind bluntly, even when facing a 6-year-old child. He was truly straightforward, best not to take it too much to heart. The man sat back down. Chasey lifted her chin, her voice stern. Well then, don't let this happen again. Yes, my lady. He sat up straight, lost in thought. Then his expression grew tense, restless, hesitant, as if he wanted to say something. Chasey frowned, thinking irritably, I just told him not to do this again. She asked with annoyance, What is it this time? The man broke into a sweat, hesitating. It's just, how should I put this? I have never seen a 6-year-old child this brilliant before. Lady Chasey, you've truly opened my eyes. Chasey curled her lips into a faint smile. She thought to herself. I expected him to say something else entirely. She turned to look out the window, the fading afternoon light falling over her golden hair. Her gaze was quiet, full of thought. This is only the beginning. The lakeside town within Zeviana territory. She sprang up at once and dashed toward the carriage door. Her skirt fluttered as the man called out in alarm, Wait, Lady Chasey. There's something I must warn you about. Lady Chasey, you are the most brilliant child I have ever seen, but I beg you, once we're outside, please hide how clever you are. Flustered, his eyes worried. There's a reason the Marquis didn't bring you home sooner. In this country, there are people who are utterly ruthless, and being too intelligent isn't necessarily a good thing when it comes to your safety. He suddenly gave a start. Chasey had vanished. He called out, Lady Chasey, where are you? Lady Chasey, please wait for me. She already knew situations like this always concealed danger. Zeviana territory had the most developed trade in the entire country. But because the king suffered from a chronic illness, the queen had seized most of his power. Grandfather refused to bow to her, so nobles loyal to the queen isolated and persecuted him. Keeping the business running smoothly was no easy task. This is the most prosperous town in our territory, the girl said eagerly. I want to go see that place over there. A knight in full armor, his face hidden beneath a hood, blocked the path. He raised his hand, his voice firm. Steward Nayland, I advise you not to go any further. Steward Nayland turned to face the knight, his expression serious. Why is that? Chasey wondered, is something wrong? What's happened? The knight tilted his head, his voice clearly uneasy. Over there is... Don't tell me. The steward suddenly turned back. Lady Chasey, let's explore somewhere else first. The girl wondered, what's going on? Behind the steward, a terrifying sight came into view. Are they hanging that woman? Her heart raced as memories from Chasey's past life kept surfacing. The girl's face went blank with shock. The steward called out loudly, Lady Chasey! Moments later, the girl fainted. In the carriage, the steward asked, My lady, are you feeling better now? The girl asked, What happened to that woman? He explained that it was because the witch hunts in the region had grown increasingly severe. Every full moon, the church would hunt down witches marked as omens of ill fortune. This is meant to ensure the safety and stability of the territory. Lady Chasey, please don't be afraid. Chasey looked up, thinking to herself, this man is truly a terrible liar. You mean someone is hanged every single month? Steward Nayland, seated on the bench, lowered his head and answered briefly. Essentially, yes. She concluded, so this isn't really a witch hunt at all. It's the queen using the church to flaunt her power and intimidate grandfather. Steward Nayland froze at once. He exclaimed, astonished. Lady Chasey, you understand even this? She said plainly, yes, so speak to me directly, don't worry, I won't be frightened, and don't lie to me either. He explained slowly, these schemes are meant to force the Marquis into submission, but every time he retreats one step, they advance 10. This is how, in the end, they seize the Zeviana family's entire fortune and territory. She asked worriedly, but tonight isn't a full moon. If it's not a witch hunt day, then why is the church here? Nayland lowered his head, his expression grave, and only whispered, Lady Chasey? The church heard that the Zeviana heiress had returned to the estate, so they deliberately moved up the witch hunt. The soldier said, Lady Chasey is the daughter of Lord William. Lord William caused the church a great deal of trouble while he was alive, so they despise him deeply. They are deliberately targeting Lady Chasey. Worse still, they've already executed one woman. But upon hearing that Lady Chasey was coming to visit, they seized another one as well. They captured that woman's daughter, and now they're waiting for Lady Chasey to arrive so they can carry out the execution right in front of her. Steward Nayland's face filled with fury, his brow furrowed, his eyes wide. He shouted, Are you telling me there's a girl being held right now waiting to be executed? The soldier spoke up. Steward Nayland, if you want to save her, I can gather a few men and… Nayland cut him off firmly. No. He said, half the people in our territory believe in God. If we defy the church, we will become their enemy. Their true goal is to force the Marquis's hand. But if we do nothing, that girl will certainly die. The final scene showed Nayland and the soldier standing together beneath the dim light. Nayland concluded in a low, subdued voice, There's no way to stop this. Either way, we can't stay here any longer. I'll take Lady Chasey home first and report to the Marquis. From inside the carriage, Chasey challenged him. What's the point of telling grandfather when there's nothing he can do? Wouldn't that only make him angrier and worsen his illness? Steward Nayland spun around, his face full of shock. Lady Chasey. She spoke gently. Steward Nayland, I need to ask a favor of you. Lady Chasey, I still believe this is far too dangerous. The church is far too arrogant. It's best not to provoke them. She thought to herself, Nayland is wrong again. We're not the ones provoking them. They're the ones provoking us. Seth, the local priest, spoke with a solemn air. I hear the Zeviana heiress has returned. I've come to ask the two of you to pay your respects to the sign of God. Chasey gritted her teeth, her eyes burning with rage. She thought bitterly to herself, this man truly has something wrong in his head, calling the hanging of a girl a sign of God and demanding a 6-year-old child bow to it. Steward Nayland looked at Chasey and called out gently, Lady Chasey. She spoke loudly with the genuine curiosity of a child. The sign of God, huh? Ooh, Chasey wants to see it. Chasey wants to look. Steward Nayland froze in place, only managing to blurt out, Huh? The priest's face relaxed into a clearer smile. He looked pleased, his eyes narrowing with satisfaction. He said, Wonderful, then. Please allow me to guide you, Lady Zeviana. The girl hesitated for a moment. Then she offered her hand for him to lead her. She spoke with a child's innocence. Thank you, Father. Chasey is so excited. Looking up from the execution platform, a woman stood with a noose looped around her neck. Chasey looked up, her face going pale, her whole body tensing. She thought, I braced myself for this, but it's still dizzying. The priest turned to her with a triumphant smile, asking in a falsely gentle voice, Lady Chasey, are you all right? Chasey thought to herself, Look at that smug expression. Just as I thought, he's trying to scare me. She released his hand at once. Chasey immediately pointed toward the platform, her voice eager. Is that a witch? The priest froze, his face blank. Huh? He glanced at Chasey, sweat beading on his temple, and asked cautiously, Lady Chasey, aren't you afraid? Chasey tilted her head with a smile, her eyes mischievous. Do you want Chasey to be afraid? The priest frowned. What did you just say? Chasey smiled brightly. What Chasey means is, hunting evil is justice. It's a blessing from God. And since it's a blessing from God, why would I be afraid? The corner of his mouth curled upward. Exactly right. He raised his hand and gave the order. Then bring out the other witch as well. Steward Nayland flinched, freezing in place. Before the crowd, the priest declared, Let the Zeviana heiress witness this sacred blessing. Chasey smiled stiffly. Church guards stood beside the gallows, while a braided girl collapsed to her knees on the ground. Among the crowd, someone whispered, "Two of them this time?" Another answered, "They're the ones bringing this misfortune to our town. Isn't that frightening enough?" Thank goodness the priest is protecting the town from these witches. From behind, Chasey looked straight at the girl being hanged, her hair fluttering gently, and silently reassured her. "Don't cry anymore. I won't let them hang you." Chasey looked up, her eyes curious, and asked the priest. Chasey is curious. "How do you know they're witches?" The priest smiled thinly. "Ha, that's not something you need to concern yourself with." He held up a stack of papers before the crowd. "We have confiscated the evidence. This girl never received a proper education, yet she was able to write so many poems. This is proof that she bartered with the devil for wisdom." Nayland pressed him. "Is that all you have?" The priest shot back. "Is that not enough? Then add to that the testimony of God's own servant. Or are you questioning my judgment?" The crowd murmured behind them. That's right, the priest was chosen by God to serve him. His words and actions are all by God's command. How could he lie? And if our failing trade isn't the witch's doing, then whose is it? Chasey smiled innocently. Of course, Chasey also believes she must be a witch. But according to the scripture passed down by the church, burning is the only true way to identify a witch. A real witch is one who survives the trial of fire. Whoever doesn't burn to death must have a cross driven into their chest and be buried in the ground, so they can never rise again. The priest raised his chin defiantly. So what? Chasey took a step forward. Since Chasey is still young, there's something she just can't understand. Is it because of you that no witch has been caught yet? No. Could it be that a witch hunt has to be held every single month because you aren't following the scripture properly to eliminate them? The priest flinched, his voice sharp. What did you just say? Several villagers exchanged glances, looking puzzled, then nodded slowly. That does make sense, the girl has a point. Steward Nayland stepped forward, his voice resolute. Exactly. We should burn her to confirm it for ourselves. According to the scripture, whoever doesn't burn to death is the true witch. The priest flinched, shouting furiously, his face flushed red. Absolutely not. The stake burning has not been carried out in 100 years. Nayland leaned in closer. Ha! Could it be you're afraid the accused witch will actually die in the fire? The priest gritted his teeth. You! He cursed under his breath. Nayland. Damn you! Then the priest raised his hand and gave the order. Our God is merciful. Remove the gag from her mouth and give her a chance to clear her name. If she can clearly explain the true source of her intelligence, she may still be spared execution. I only wanted to write down my feelings. I'm sorry, I won't write anything carelessly again, I'm sorry. The priest looked down and declared, Since she has shown genuine repentance, we shall grant her forgiveness. The soldier by the post untied the noose. He replied, Understood. The girl stammered in disbelief. I'm being released? The priest said, I trust you to have no further objections. Since the witch has promised not to use the wisdom granted by the devil, I can grant her the chance for forgiveness and let her keep her life. As long as she agrees to enter the convent and devote the rest of her life to serving God, atoning for her sins. He muttered, Let's end it here. I'll let her go this once. Chasey lunged forward, her face full of fury. She shouted, How can this be? She's a witch. How can you trust the word of a witch? He stuck out his foot and tripped her. What did you just say? Chasey fell to her knees on the ground, crying out loudly, her voice trembling but forceful. Suddenly, she rushed toward the steward. She screamed, her voice full of genuine fear. I'm scared, we can't let her go. Oleg stiffly, awkwardly raised his arms to embrace Chasey, as if putting on a show. He soothed her in a falsely gentle voice. There, Lady Chasey. Don't be scared. Don't cry. The priest watched the scene with a bewildered expression, a thought crossing his mind. Huh? Weren't they here to save the girl? He bellowed, his voice full of frustration. You don't want to save her, but I can't hang her either. What exactly do you people want? Chasey stepped out before the crowd, fists clenched. She cried out, Burn her! We have to burn her! It's the only way to know for certain whether she's truly a witch. I'll only feel safe once she's burned at the stake. The elderly priest immediately protested angrily. We cannot burn her. He tried to maintain his composure and continued. God is full of mercy. He is willing to show compassion even to a witch. Burning at the stake is far too cruel. It hasn't been carried out in a very long time. Chasey gripped Nayland's arm tightly, her face full of panic. Nayland stood in front of her, shielding her. He raised a hand and demanded loudly, "Then could it be that you're afraid she'll die the moment she's thrown into the fire?" "If she truly dies, how will you explain it, Your Eminence? Or will you admit that the church has been executing innocent girls every single month?" The priest gritted his teeth, his eyes narrowing, his face filled with fury at the steward's words. "What will your followers think of this?" he muttered furiously. "You." The priest lowered his voice, but a threat lingered beneath it. "Lord Nayland, watch your words carefully. Are you so determined to prove me wrong, even if it means condemning an innocent girl to death?" Meanwhile, the accused girl trembled and wailed as she was dragged away. "I'm not a witch. I truly am innocent. Lord Nayland, please spare me. I beg you." Her eyes filled with despair as she sobbed. "I thought you were as honorable as your master." The priest tilted his head toward Nayland, his tone full of insinuation. "A man as upright as you, committing such a cruel act. And what of your loyalty to the Zeviana faith you've always upheld?" Behind the steward, Chasey clutched him tightly. "Didn't Uncle Nayland promise to do everything to protect Chasey? Chasey is so scared." He raised his arm firmly, his voice resolute. "Do you hear that? Lady Chasey is frightened. Bring the firewood at once and build the stake now." The priest's eyes went wide with horror. He cried out, What is this?" The order rang out harshly. "Burn her." The girl looked down, her eyes brimming with tears, and cried out in terror. "How can this be? You saved me from the noose only to burn me at the stake instead. Lord Nayland, have you gone mad? You will regret this decision today." The priest leaned in closer, his eyes hardening, his voice dropping low. "There are rumors that your little lady brings misfortune and is in fact a witch herself. Aren't you afraid the church will take revenge for you defying me like this?" Chasey declared firmly. "Chasey is not a witch." The elderly priest looked at her with a mix of pity and mockery, smiling coldly. "Lady Chasey, that's not something that can be proven with words alone." Chasey lowered her head, hair falling over half her face, a faint smile appearing at the corner of her lips as she answered softly. "No, Chasey can prove it. Chasey will undergo the trial by fire as well." The elderly priest, horrified, broke into a sweat and shouted, What did you just say?" "If Chasey dies in the fire, that will prove Chasey is not a witch. And from now on, no one will ever say Chasey brings misfortune again." The priest spun toward Nayland, his face taut with tension. "Won't you stop this child?" Nayland said nothing. Then he swung his arm firmly and declared loudly, "She truly is a daughter of the Zeviana house, willing to sacrifice herself for the family's honor." The priest immediately looked horrified and shouted, "Have you all lost your minds?" Chasey climbed the wooden steps leading up to the stake. The girl bound to the post, startled, turned back and cried out, "But Lady Chasey, I'm not a witch. I want to live." Chasey whispered, "I know." The girl was stunned. "Huh? Don't be afraid, I'm here with you." The girl's eyes went wide, too stunned to speak. Nayland raised the blazing torch high, his voice ringing out, "Please go ahead." Beneath the red glow of the sunset, Nayland lifted the torch before the priest and declared clearly, "Please, Your Eminence, light the flame yourself and show us your miracle." Amid the tense atmosphere, Nayland smiled coldly and gave a scoff. The priest broke into a sweat, falling into an uneasy silence. Then he spun around and gave the order with a mocking tone. "If your little lady craves death so badly, I will grant it to her." A knight stepped forward, holding a blazing torch. He pressed the flame against the wood at the base of the stake. The bound girl stared at the fire, her face trembling with terror. Behind her, Chasey watched closely, her gaze tense. The stake towered high, and the knight paused, exclaiming in surprise. He turned and reported, his tone grave. "Your Eminence, the wood won't catch fire." The priest, stunned, cried out, "What?" He strode forward quickly, snatching the torch from the knight's hand. "Give it to me." The old man stared intently at the still-burning torch, sweat pouring down his face. This torch. Chasey peeked out from behind the wooden railing, her eyes round with curiosity. She called down to the priest below, her tone polite but clear. "Your Eminence, is something wrong?" The priest flinched and spun around, his face full of alarm. She stayed silent, resting her chin on her hand, simply staring. The priest's eyes trembled, startled. He hesitated for a moment, then backed off. No, nothing's wrong." Steward Nayland spoke up formally. "Your Eminence." Nayland's voice was low and mocking. If the girl dies, she was innocent. And if she doesn't, she's a witch. That's what you call the will of God. But if the stake won't even light, what does that mean? The priest declared with conviction that if dry wood couldn't catch fire even with a strong flame, it must be God's mercy setting them free. Nayland stood facing him, lips curled in mockery. Ha! God's mercy again? The priest replied gravely, trying to maintain composure. It is by God's protection alone that they are allowed to live. So you're saying not only are they not witches, they are people beloved by God. The priest's eyes went wide with shock. He said, his voice heavy. That's correct. Steward Nayland turned and raised his hand, calling out loudly to the crowd. Everyone, hear this clearly. Lady Chasey is one beloved by God. Whoever dares say she brings misfortune will face divine punishment. The town erupted with cheers. Long live Lady Chasey! Hallelujah! Nayland smiled at the priest. Haha, mistaking someone beloved by God for a witch. How careless of you, your eminence. Repent sincerely, lest you bring down God's wrath upon yourself. The old man grumbled, a bitter huff escaping him. He handed the torch over to the steward. I will remember this, Lord Nayland. Papers scattered in the wind as the priest turned and walked away. Nayland turned to the soldier, lowering his voice. Disperse the crowd and have the firewood brought back to the estate. The soldier replied, Yes, my lord, he continued, and see that the other woman receives a proper burial. In a small wooden cabin, the braided girl sat huddled in her dress, her eyes still wet with tears. I'm still alive. The braided girl stared at her own hands, murmuring in confusion, Could it be that I really was chosen by God, that he truly protected me? Inside the cabin, the girl asked bluntly, Do you really believe there's a God out there? One who would let something so wicked happen? The girl spoke up. Lady Chasey, if it wasn't God's mercy, then why didn't the stake catch fire? Why weren't we burned? The young lady answered calmly. There is no such thing as gods or witches in this world. She continued, But demons, they do exist. It's just that most of them wear human faces, pretending to live by our standards. And it's precisely those wearing masks who are the true demons. The braided girl looked up, her face full of astonishment, and murmured, Who would ever want to watch themselves swaying from a noose? She turned her head, her eyes still damp but calmer now, and asked, Even if that's true, what can we possibly do about it? She said she wasn't like Lady Chasey, just an ordinary commoner with no power to stand against the church. She bowed her head, clutching her chest with both hands, her whole body trembling. Thank you for saving me today. If it weren't for Chasey, my cowardly self would have accepted my fate and died. The girl stood in silence, her long hair falling still, saying nothing more. A hand picked up the paper scattered on the steps, along with the words, You are a girl beloved by God, and now you have the power to influence countless people around you. The braided girl gasped in surprise. That's my diary, but I promised I wouldn't write any more. Chasey lowered her head and said calmly, Don't misunderstand. Whatever you choose to do has nothing to do with me. To be honest, I'm protecting this territory for my own sake, for my life and for grandfather's. A flicker of confusion crossed the braided girl's face as Chasey continued. I saved you because it served my purpose. The church will keep targeting you, and you'll have to keep bowing your head, even if that means they keep killing. But for me, stopping them is a matter of life and death. I won't tolerate anyone standing in my way. I am not a witch, nor am I an ordinary commoner. Even if the name Chasey Ziviana is forever remembered as a villain, I will make this territory so powerful that no one will dare challenge it. Finally, she turned, gathering her skirt. No matter how weak you may feel, at least fight to the very end with everything you have. At the very least, it gives you something worth protecting, and a reason to live. Chasey walked away, leaving the braided girl kneeling alone, reaching out toward the papers on the ground, gazing at them in silence. In the carriage, Nayland sat with his arms crossed beside an armored soldier. The soldier asked, Lord Nayland, what exactly happened today? Lord Nayland closed his eyes in silence, and the memory surfaced. Earlier. You wanted me to prepare firewood for the stake and soak it with water? The girl replied. That's right. Nayland asked, What do you think? The soldier looked puzzled. Huh? Me? Think what? If I knew, I wouldn't be asking. In this world, everyone knows damp wood won't catch fire. Zeviana has a thriving timber industry, and the common pine there is naturally dark, like coal. Dark wood, when soaked, is very hard to notice unless you look closely. Even if no one else noticed the wood had been soaked, Surely the high priest must have realized it. What I don't understand is why he didn't expose our plan. Because he couldn't. A witch cannot be burned to death. If the high priest had swapped the wet wood and burned the girl to death, it would prove he had falsely accused her, and it would make the people doubt his judgment. The people's faith is the very foundation of the church's influence. The church cannot afford to let them doubt. Especially since the one being burned was the Marquis's niece, word would have spread throughout the entire kingdom. To avoid that outcome, they had already abandoned burning as a punishment. So even knowing the trick, the high priest had no choice but to keep silent and play along. Steward Nayland and the soldier fell into thought. The soldier turned and whispered to Nayland, "Lord Nayland, it seems to me Lady Chasey had planned everything from beginning to end." Steward Nayland snapped furiously, "Don't be a fool, that child is only 6. How could she possibly plan something like this?" The soldier stammered. "But," he composed himself and stated firmly, "this was all my doing. It has nothing to do with Lady Chasey." The soldier froze. "Huh? No disrespect intended, but that's hard to believe, my lord," Nayland said sharply. "Do you believe a 6-year-old thought of this rather than me?" The soldier relented. "Yes, if you say so, my lord." Off to the side, Chasey let out a long, sleepy yawn. Nayland said, "Regardless, this has nothing to do with Lady Chasey." "Understood?" the soldier answered. "I understand. But what if the Marquis asks?" Nayland said. "Then of course we tell him the truth. Tell him the Zeviana family has produced an unmatched prodigy." A red-haired man sat in an armchair looking at the person standing before him and asked, "What's the situation?" The assistant, wearing round spectacles, looked tense. Priest Seth arrived at the lakeside town as planned. But Nayland saved the girl who was about to be hanged, and now the townspeople are praising both Lady Chasey and that girl as chosen by God. Gus blurted out. "What? What's more, this may have tied the church's hands. We can no longer use the witch hunts to pressure the Marquess." Gus slammed his fist on the table, furious. "Damn it." The assistant continued. "We informed the church the moment Lady Chasey left the estate. Yet they managed to prepare all this within a single afternoon. It's as if someone had set a trap in advance." "What are you implying? Are you saying the church betrayed me and conspired with my father?" He spoke up. "The high priest told me something. If Lord Gus fails to prove his worth, he will be discarded just like his brothers before him." 3 maids stood chatting in the bright hallway of the estate. "The news has already spread through town. The Marquis must know by now." Another chimed in. "That's not all. I heard that today the church mistook a girl beloved by God for a witch and nearly hanged her. Goodness, something like that happened?" They marveled further. "Lord Nayland and Lady Chasey are truly extraordinary. When the Marquis hears about this, he'll surely be proud." Chasey walked through the house, humming happily. In her imagination, her grandfather turned toward her, smiling warmly. "Chasey, you did wonderfully today. What would you like as a reward?" Chasey shyly raised a hand to her lips. "Oh, I don't want anything. I just want to live happily by your side, that's enough." Her grandfather stood up sternly, his voice resolute. "Absolutely not. No. I will not let my beloved granddaughter be treated poorly. Guards, strip Gus and Oleg of their inheritance titles. I will grant them to Chasey instead. From now on, you will help me manage the family's affairs, both great and small." Chasey pressed her hands to her cheeks, flustered. "Oh, Grandpa, that's too much. Uncle and his family will be furious." At night, the girl rolled back and forth in bed, giggling. He, she muttered to herself. "I really shouldn't let my imagination run wild like that." She buried her face deeper into the pillow, cheeks flushed, trembling with excitement. But she couldn't help feeling thrilled all the same. The scene shifted to the study, where the master of the house wore a stern expression. He snapped, "I don't recall giving you permission to do that, Nayland." Nayland knelt on one knee, hand over his heart, head bowed. "This humble servant sincerely apologizes, my lord. I made a grave error. I should have advised the young lady to stay away from that matter." "Do you realize what a dangerous gamble you just took?" Nayland replied. "I understand, but it's been a long time since I felt this exhilarated." "What do you mean by that?" "I remember the days when I traveled the world with you, doing as we pleased, saving whoever we wanted to save. The young lady's courage today reminded me of those times. So what you're saying is, our current life leaves us feeling stifled and restless. I understand your struggles, my lord. and I know you are even more bound than I am." The master fell silent, the air growing heavy. "You have quite the silver tongue. As head of the family, I must be especially cautious of every possible consequence. Surely you understand my concerns. Save one life, and the enemy will take 10 in retaliation. That's how it's always been. I fear they won't let this go easily. You worry they'll retaliate by harming the young lady. Please don't worry. I've already suppressed the rumors and made it clear this had nothing to do with Lady Chasey. But the church will want a scapegoat to vent their anger on. Courage always comes at a price. Let word slip that I had been planning this incident for a long time." The steward flinched. "You intend to do that?" he declared firmly. "As head of this family, I will bear all the consequences." The next morning, Chasey lay in bed, eyes fluttering open. She rubbed her eyes and mumbled, "Is it morning already?" Chasey sat up in the large bed, flanked on both sides by rows of maids standing at attention. A chorus of greetings rang out. "Good morning, Lady Chasey." Chasey bolted upright, startled, clutching the blanket to her chest. "What is going on?" The door opened, and Nayland placed a hand over his chest and bowed. "Did you sleep well, my lady?" she said loudly. "What is happening here? Did you send a whole crowd of servants to watch over me?" A row of maids stood behind him as Nayland gestured toward them. "It's a misunderstanding, Lady Chasey. They're here to serve you. These are the finest maids on the estate. You may choose any one of them as your personal maid. Your custom-made garments have been completed and will be delivered this afternoon. I personally oversaw the process under the Marquess's supervision. If there is anything you need or want, simply say the word. I will do everything within my power to provide it. I trust you understand, my lady." Chasey drew back, her face puzzled. "I understand, but are you sure you haven't taken the wrong medicine or something?" The man smiled faintly. The girl thought to herself, "Just yesterday I was scolded for being stubborn and reckless. Yet today I'm being treated so specially. He must have lost his mind. And yet, his expression is so gentle." "The Marquess also asked me to give you this." The box opened, revealing a gold medallion set with a red gem. The girl froze in astonishment. "This is the heir's badge." She lifted the medallion to examine it. The Zeviana inheritance medallion symbolizes the right to inherit the territory and the title of the Zeviana family. The engraving on the gem showed a name that wasn't Chasey's, but William's. The man said, "That belonged to your father." Lord William was first in the line of succession, the pride of the Zeviana family. The one first in the line of succession is the one who receives the Marquess title after William's passing. Gus and his son had moved into that first position instead. The steward said respectfully, "Allow me to help you put it on, my lady." Chasey replied at once, "I refuse." Nayland froze. His face showed surprise. "You refuse, my lady?" Chasey closed the drawer. "It serves no practical purpose. Better to keep it as a keepsake. Please tell him that I intend to rely on my own abilities and that I will earn a medallion engraved with my own name." She lifted her skirt and walked briskly toward the door. "If there's nothing else?" He stood there stunned, in silence. Does Lady Chasey think she can just do as she pleases? Did she think I'd let that slide? A hand grabbed the hem of Chasey's dress and pulled hard. Chasey was yanked back. Her face full of alarm, she cried out, "What are you doing?" "Steward Nayland, let go of me," the man replied calmly with a smile. "I already told the Marquess that you possess a talent seen once in 100 years, one that needs to be nurtured." A bald, bespectacled tutor entered smiling, holding a book under his arm. The Marquess urgently summoned the finest teacher in the territory. He bowed politely. "Lady Chasey, please become my companion in learning." Chasey's eyes widened as she cried out, "Ugh, so bald." Chasey shouted furiously, "I achieved something so remarkable yesterday, and this is how you all repay me? I'm only 6 years old." Nayland grabbed Chasey by the collar and pulled her in front of a towering stack of books, while the tutor nodded approvingly, holding his curriculum. Nayland said, "A 6-year-old should begin with the basic etiquette of the Zeviana house." The tutor chimed in, "Leave it to me." Whispers passed from one to another. "Poor Lady Chasey. Steward Nayland is making her study day and night." Earlier, Chasey had nuzzled against her grandfather's shoulder, pouting. "Grandpa, Chasey wants to go into town." Her grandfather stroked her head. He answered kindly, "You should finish your studies first, my little girl." The maids murmured complaints. "The child is only 6. What's wrong with wanting to play at that age?" "I heard Lady Chasey asked for her own personal medallion." "Really? A medallion engraved with one's own name means that person is qualified to inherit the marquisate. In the wide hallway, footsteps approached. The maids kept talking. Lady Chasey has real nerve, but surely something like that is impossible for a girl, isn't it? If it weren't, Lord Gus would probably be breaking into a cold sweat. Isn't that exactly right? If it weren't for the sudden deaths of the two young masters, Lord Gus would never even have been considered for succession. The door burst open. Chasey stood in the doorway holding a book, startled. Two maids hurriedly bowed before Gus, pleading, "Please have mercy, Lord Gus. We sincerely apologize. We weren't informed of your visit today." Gus rolled up his sleeves, his face dark with anger. "It seems the servants at my father's estate are just as useless as my own. What right does he have to say I can't manage my own household staff? I will have all of you dismissed without fail. Get out now." Chasey watched silently, a thought crossing her mind. Like father, like son. What a disaster. If only there were a way to knock some sense into them. Then she turned to the tutor and said calmly, "Sir, I've mastered today's lesson. May I be excused early?" Chasey approached the sofa. The red-haired boy sitting there looked up at her. The boy smiled mockingly. "Oh, you're here. It's been a while. So you've finally started attending lessons too, no matter your position." Chasey glared coldly, hugging her book tightly, and addressed him directly by name. Oleg Ziviana. A thought ran through Chasey's mind. "Why is he here?" The boy replied, "You've only lived here 2 days and you've already caused trouble with the church." Chasey shot back at once. "So what? I'm not allowed to?" Oleg smiled confidently, tilting his head. "My father already told me. He said you upset the church when you went into town to shop." She thought to herself, "Your father really knows how to twist words." Oleg pointed at her lecturing, his expression stern. "I'd advise you to behave properly and stop causing more trouble for the family. Speaking of causing trouble, I could never compare to you and your father." Oleg jumped up in anger, fists clenched. "What did you just say?" In his fluster, he knocked a doll off the table. The doll landed with a thud in front of the sofa. Oleg stood frozen, his face darkening. Chasey remained calm, standing across from him. A blonde-haired doll in a cloth bag tied with a yellow ribbon, looking brand new and carefully wrapped. The girl wondered why there was a doll, looking so new and neatly packaged. Could it be? Is it what I think it is? Oleg panicked slightly, holding up the doll's bag and stammered defensively. "Don't misunderstand. I only bought it because I heard people talking about this doll and wanted to see if it was worth the attention, that's all." Nayland opened the door and stepped in, glancing at the two of them, and said calmly, "Oh, young Master Oleg, it seems you've brought a gift for Lady Chasey. Young Master Oleg bought it for you at the market this morning." Oleg protested irritably, still gripping the bag. "It's only because grandfather said I had to apologize before I'd be allowed back into the main house." Chasey narrowed her eyes, her expression indifferent but understanding. "So that's what this is about." Steward Nayland stood between them, scratching his head. "Young Master Oleg, an apology like that won't accomplish anything." Oleg stormed forward irritably and shoved the doll's bag into Chasey's arms. "Fine, I've apologized, just accept it. Take it and let's get along from now on." "Just as I expected, you don't even know how to apologize properly." Chasey turned and walked away, doll bag in hand, with Nayland behind her looking puzzled. Oleg frowned and called after her, "What are you planning to do?" Chasey walked over to the trash bin and said calmly, "Since you gave this to me, doing this should be fine, right?" Oleg leaned in, his eyes expectant, and asked quietly, "So you'll accept it then?" Chasey dropped the doll straight into the trash bin. Steward Nayland cried out in alarm, "Lady Chasey, that's the trash bin." Oleg flinched. "Huh?" Chasey turned around, her eyes bright and cold. "Look closely, Oleg." "That is my answer. In my world, there is no rule that obligates anyone to accept an apology. I'm leaving now. Tomorrow I'll make up the lessons I missed." From behind, the red-haired boy watched the girl heading for the door. He stammered, grabbing at her. "Wait, if you won't accept it, then I... She walked toward the door but nearly collided with someone coming in. Gus shouted furiously, swinging his hand and striking the boy across the face. "Useless brat." The boy's head snapped to one side from the blow,